Our featured author today is Brigitte Gabriel. Ms. Gabriel grew up in a Christian Arab family in South Lebanon during the Lebanese Civil War. She later moved to Israel as a young woman and began her career as a news anchor for World News, an evening Arabic news broadcast for Middle East television. After marrying an American correspondent in Jerusalem, Ms. Gabriel immigrated to the United States in 1989 and founded a television production company that covers local news for major media outlets. After the tragedy of September 11th, she founded Act for America, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating Americans about the threat of radical Islam to world peace and national security, and to motivate Americans to take action against terrorism. Her previous best-selling book was Because They Hate, a survivor of Islamic terror warns America. Ms. Gabriel has appeared extensively on television and radio, travels widely to speak on topics related to the Middle East, and has addressed audiences that include the FBI, the United States Special Operations Command, members of the U.S. Congress, the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs, members of the British Parliament's House of Commons, the Prime Minister of Australia, as well as the Joint Forces Staff College. Ms. Gabriel has a very personal story to tell, and she has a very personal reaction to the Middle East and the crisis that we face around the world. As you will note, she is also very passionate in what she believes. We thank you for your kind attention, and I'm sure it will be an interesting discussion. Brigitte?
Thank you. I am honored and delighted to be here today, and I want to thank each one of you for giving me your time for 1 hour today to listen to why I believe we need to be concerned about radical Islam. And I want to emphasize, because this is such a sensitive subject, that I am talking about the radical Islamist rise across the world. I'm not talking about the moderates. I will address them, but this lecture is about the rise of Islamofascism throughout the world. Terrorism is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. It's not a libertarian issue. Terrorism is an American issue. Terrorism is a threat facing Western civilization today. Terrorism has been on the rise, is on the rise, but we have not opened our eyes till September 11th until it happened on our soil. America was attacked since 1979 under the Carter administration, who was a Democratic president, with the hostages in Iran. America was attacked under the Ronald Reagan administration with the bombings of the Marine in Lebanon in 1983. America was attacked under the George Bush Sr. administration. America was attacked under the Clinton administration, who was a Democratic president. It was actually under the Clinton administration that the Taliban trained 10,000 Al-Qaeda members in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Those people were not being trained for entertainment purposes. Those people were being trained to attack the United States of America. George Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney were not even a blurb on the political American landscape. So for people today to say that we are fighting terrorism because of America's foreign policy and because George Bush is fighting in Iraq and in Afghanistan, it is absolutely not true. And whoever we're going to elect this next election, whether it's going to be Obama or McCain, they're going to be facing the exact same problem our past presidents, Carter, Reagan, George Bush Sr., Clinton, George Bush Jr., have dealt with. I wish this was just a temporary problem that we're going to solve and move forward. I wish this was a short-term problem. I wish it would have ended with Bill Clinton, a Democrat. I wish it would have ended with George Bush Sr. I wish it would have ended with Ronald Reagan. I wish it would have ended with the Carter administration. But it did not. And we will be facing this threat. What we are seeing today is a reversal of the modernization that Islam has experienced in the last few hundred years. We have seen, after the ending of the Islamic Empire with Ataturk in Turkey in 1924, giving women rights to vote, to have choices, to get an education, to have a choice in marriage, to work in the public place. We have seen that modernization get affected in Egypt. Look at the modernization that Egypt experienced. Look at the modernization that Iran experienced under the Shah. And look what Ayatollah Khomeini did when he came to power. Look at the modernization that was in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, women were able to work, to study, to hold professional jobs. Once the Taliban took over, within 24 hours they instituted Sharia law. So those moderate Islamists in Afghanistan and in Iran who did not pay attention to the radicals, who thought the radicals are just fighting the Russians or they're fighting this and that, they're not really affecting us, ended up paying a very heavy price. All that happened before the radicals ever turned their eyes on America. So this is the problem we are dealing with today. Right now we are seeing a rise of Islamo-Nazism rising across the globe. As I'm speaking with you today, there are 44 conflicts around the world between Muslims and non-Muslims, regardless of what the religion of those non-Muslims are. So this is what we are facing. A lot of people say Islam is a religion of peace. So how did Islam start? A lot of people do not know how Islam started, and I'm going to give you a brief preview. Islam began when Muhammad got his vision from the angel Gabriel in 622, when he believed he was the prophet and the last chosen one to carry God's word to the earth and to the masses. So he started preaching his vision, and he spent 12 years trying to win followers in Mecca, his city. But he failed. He only was able to recruit very few people who were closest to him. So he left Mecca and immigrated to Yathrib, which later became Medina, because he was hoping to appeal to the Jews who were educated, who were the business people, so they can adopt his religion and accept him as the prophet. And he actually borrowed a lot of the statements from the Bible. This is why you see a lot of peaceful verses in the beginning of the Quran. He borrowed fasting from the Jews. Muslims don't eat pigs. That was a tradition borrowed from the Jews. He was trying to appeal to the Jews to accept him. And when he failed to convince him to accept him as the last prophet and accept Islam, he declared war against them and he became a warrior. And he started killing them and expelling them. And I discussed 3 main battles in my book, They Must Be Stopped, as to how those battles affected Islam today and how Muhammad became a military warrior. And I discussed in particular the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, because Muhammad was not only a prophet, he became a military leader and a fighter. He led by example in fighting war and jihad against the infidels or the non-believers. And the Treaty of Hudaybiyah is about when Muhammad signed a peace treaty with the Meccans, because he could not fight them, he could not win against them. And a problem erupted in Hudaybiyah, near Mecca, and he signed the 10-year peace treaty with the Meccans. And the 10 peace treaty says that they will have peace between the two of them. And Muhammad took the time to strengthen his army, to strengthen his people, to rearm, and finally broke the treaty 2 years later and attacked the Meccans, taking them over because they had put their guards down, being deceived that Muhammad was not a fighter anymore, he was not going to fight them. And I use the example of Hudaybiyah to show how we in modern history now, how what we would call nationalist Muslims have used this example and tactic of war. And I